Welcome everyone to Dark Tales Shorts 101. I'm your host, and here we step away from the safety of the light and into the stories that hide in the darkness. On this channel, I'll bring you chilling horror stories, terrifying encounters, dark legends, and tales inspired by events that may leave you wondering what is real and what might still be out there. So turn down the lights, get comfortable, and put on your headphones because some stories are meant to be heard in the dark. Welcome to Dark Tales Shorts 101. Now, let the story begin. This story was shared with me by two hunters who say they experienced something they still cannot explain. According to them, it happened during the fall hunting season, sometime around 2010, deep in the mountains of North Carolina. The two hunters asked that their names not be used. What you're about to hear is their account, based on what they remember experiencing that day. I cannot independently verify what they saw. I cannot tell you whether it was an animal they misidentified, something unusual, or something we simply don't understand. But according to both hunters, it happened. And they told me that what they experienced in those mountains changed their lives forever. Whether you believe their encounter was supernatural, an unknown animal, mistaken identity, or something else entirely, I'll leave that decision to you. It was late fall. Most of the leaves had already fallen from the trees, leaving the mountains covered in brown leaves and bare branches. The temperature was dropping quickly as evening approached. The two men had hunted together for years. They knew these mountains. They knew what deer sounded like moving through dry leaves. They knew coyotes, bobcats, black bears. They knew the sounds of animals moving through the forest after dark, and they knew when something didn't belong. That afternoon, they had followed an old logging trail several miles into the mountains. They hadn't seen much. As daylight began disappearing behind the ridges, they decided it was time to head back. One hunter walked about 20 yards ahead of the other. Then the man behind him suddenly stopped. Stop. The hunter in front froze. What? No answer. He slowly turned around. The other hunter was staring into the trees. Then he pointed. Something was standing in the woods ahead of them. At first, it looked like a dog, a large one. Its fur appeared dark brown, maybe black. It was difficult to tell in the fading light. It stood perhaps 60 yards away, with its head lowered toward the ground. Neither man was frightened, not yet. Hunting dogs occasionally wandered far from their owners, so that's what they assumed it was. One hunter softly whistled. The animal stopped. Its head slowly lifted, and it looked directly at them. Neither hunter spoke. Something about the animal's face seemed wrong. Not monstrous, not obviously deformed, just wrong. Its muzzle seemed shorter than it should have been. Its eyes looked strangely positioned, and its front legs were unusually long. The creature stared at them for several seconds. Then it turned and walked behind a large tree. The hunters waited for it to emerge from the other side. 1 second passed, then 2, then 5. Nothing. One hunter whispered, "Where'd it go?" The other man didn't answer. He slowly raised his hand and pointed upward. The animal was climbing the tree, not scrambling up the trunk like a frightened animal, not jumping from branch to branch. It was climbing. Its front limbs wrapped around the trunk, its rear legs pushed against the bark. Higher and higher and higher. The two hunters stood completely still. Within seconds, the animal was 15 feet above the ground, then 20. One hunter slowly raised his rifle. The other immediately whispered, "Don't." Whatever it was suddenly stopped climbing. It pulled itself onto a thick branch. Then, something happened that neither hunter could explain. The animal's body rose upward. Its long front limbs reached above its head and grabbed another branch. Then its body dropped beneath it, and it hung there, upright, almost perfectly vertical. Its arms stretched above its head. Its legs dangled beneath it. One of the hunters later struggled to describe what he had seen. He said the posture reminded him of something between the strange upright shape of a gazelle and the long-armed hanging posture of a gibbon, except this thing still appeared to have the coarse, dark fur of a dog. Neither man spoke. Then the creature moved its head, not its shoulders, not its body, just its head. It turned toward them. Their flashlights caught its eyes. Two pale reflections appeared high above the forest floor. It was watching them. Then its mouth opened. The hunters expected a bark, maybe a growl, maybe the scream of an injured animal. Instead, something came from its throat, a strange, breathy, almost whispering sound. The two men looked at each other. Neither needed to say anything. They began backing away, slowly, one step, then another. The creature suddenly moved, not down the tree, across it. It reached for another branch and swung, then another and another, its long legs hanging beneath it. Branches shook overhead as the creature moved through the canopy. The hunters started walking faster. The creature followed. They stopped. It stopped. They moved again. It moved again. One hunter finally turned toward the trees. "Hey!" Everything stopped. No branches moving, no footsteps. Even the forest seemed strangely quiet. Then, something heavy struck the ground behind them. Neither man turned around. They ran. Dry leaves exploded beneath their boots. Branches tore against their jackets. Loose rocks rolled beneath their feet. They didn't care about being quiet anymore. They only wanted to reach the truck. Then the hunter running in front heard something that frightened him more than anything they had seen in the tree. Something was running alongside them, not behind them, beside them, just beyond the trees. They couldn't see it, but they could hear it. 4 quick footsteps, then 2 heavy ones. 4, then 2, 4, then 2. The sound kept changing, almost as though whatever was following them couldn't decide whether it wanted to run on 4 legs or 2. They reached an old creek bed. The first hunter jumped across. The second followed. They climbed the opposite bank. Then both men heard the footsteps stop. Silence. They turned around. Their flashlights moved slowly across the creek, across the rocks, across the trees. Nothing. Then one hunter raised his flashlight. The beam moved higher, 10 feet, 15, 20. There it was, hanging from a branch directly above the creek. Its arms stretched over its head, its body hanging vertically beneath them, its legs dangling in the darkness, watching. One hunter raised his rifle. This time, his finger moved toward the trigger. Before he could fire, the creature pulled itself onto the branch and disappeared into the darkness. The hunters ran. They didn't stop again. When they finally reached the truck, they threw their gear into the back and climbed inside. The doors slammed, locked. The hunter turned the key. The engine cranked. Once, twice, nothing. Again. Then the engine started. They drove. Neither man said a word. The logging trail twisted through the darkness until eventually they could see the paved road ahead. For the first time, they began to believe they had gotten away. Then the passenger looked into his side mirror. His expression changed. The driver noticed. "What?" The passenger didn't answer. "What is it?" Something was standing beside the logging trail behind them, not on 4 legs, upright, motionless, watching the truck disappear down the mountain. The 2 hunters never hunted that section of mountain again. Years later, one of them was asked whether what they saw might have been a black bear. He said no. A sick dog? No. Some kind of escaped exotic animal? He couldn't say, because neither man claimed to know what it was. They only knew what they believed they had seen, and according to them, they saw the same thing. One of the hunters eventually put it this way: "I know what a dog looks like. I know what a bear looks like, and whatever climbed that tree was watching us like it knew exactly what we were." Thank you for spending a few moments with me here on Dark Tales Shorts 101. If you enjoyed tonight's tale, stay tuned, because another story is waiting in the darkness. Until next time, turn down the lights, keep your ears open, and remember, not every story ends when the telling is over. Thank you for listening. I'll see you again for the next story.